It's Mike Shaw right back at you again. Now, in this segment, it's been a big stigma against us as black people, and this whole thing about fried chicken and watermelon. Like it's pretty much it's like they're sticking like some type of stereotype instead of just food being food and it being delicious and what have you and whatnot. So, if you want to stereotype me for like something that's delicious, that's being seasoned, and actually that's something that's very delicious and whatnot, fuck you very much and whatnot. So while I sit back and I eat my fried chicken and I drink my watermelon soda about this whole bullshit ass stigma deal, we gonna learn about how this all came about. Let's go.
Have you ever wondered, what does watermelon have to do with race? And what is so offensive about watermelon? Don't white people like watermelon too? Well, the stereotype of African Americans being excessively fond of watermelons came during a specific period in history and was used to fulfill a specific political purpose. After slaves won their emancipation, they made watermelon a symbol of their newfound freedom by growing, eating, and selling it. Southern whites responded by using the fruit to depict African Americans as unclean, lazy, and childishness. This trope was so widely accepted within popular culture that the origins of it are almost forgotten. The trope of the racist watermelon didn't emerge until after emancipation. In the early 1900s, the European imagination associated the typical watermelon eater with Italians or Arabs. A British officer stationed in Egypt in 1808 described the watermelon as a poor Arab feast, noting that the locals ate them ravenously as if the passers-by was going to snatch them away. Watermelon rinds were apparently a common sight on the streets of the port city of Rosetta. In Egypt, watermelon was also associated with uncleanliness, laziness, and childishness. These associations eventually made their way to America, but watermelon hadn't yet been connected to African Americans. In fact, at that time, Americans were just as likely to associate watermelons with white Kentucky hillbillies or New Hampshire yokels as they would a black South Carolina enslaved person. During chattel slavery, some plantation owners would allow their slaves to cultivate and even sell their own watermelons. Sometimes they would even give them a day off during the summer to enjoy their first watermelon harvest. Southern plantation owners viewed this slave's delight in watermelon as an indication of their own supposed compassion. Slaves were also careful to relish watermelon in a manner that followed the code of conduct established by whites. As a result, whites could expect slaves to act in a manner of a caricature of a watermelon-craving, juice-dripping pickaninny. Refusing to comply with this stereotype could jeopardize the precarious relationship between master and enslaved. The abolishment of enslavement drastically altered the relationship between black people and whites. Formerly enslaved individuals avoided sharecropping on white-owned plantations by growing, consuming, and selling their own watermelons. This behavior of enjoying your freedom and cultivating your own land and selling watermelon in public markets provoked a major fear within the white community. Newspapers would then stoke this fear that whites have and strengthen the idea of African Americans having an affinity for watermelons. In 1869, Frank Leslie's illustrated paper published a cartoon of an African American eating a watermelon. The accompanying article stated that Southern African Americans have a strong liking for watermelon. They thoroughly enjoy eating it. 2 years later, a Georgia newspaper reported the arrest of a black man for allegedly poisoning a watermelon with the intention of killing his neighbor. The article compared the man's actions to that of the Ku Klux Klan and asked if the Republican Congressional Subcommittee investigating the Klan should look into this incident in particular. The article also described the man as walking to the courthouse carrying an enormous watermelon. Medical journals also wrote with a scientific earnest about black patients. They claimed that their intestines were clogged with watermelons. In an 1888 report by Dr. D.Z. Holliday of Harlem, Georgia, describing how he broke down a bowel instruction of an African-American man. He claimed that the mass was filled with 820 seeds, all of which the man had ingested in one night. Also, during the 1880 election season, Democrats accused South Carolina state legislature, which was majority black during Reconstruction, of having wasted the taxpayers' money on watermelons for their own enjoyment. In 1915, the white supremacist film D.W. Griffith, A Birth of a Nation, included a watermelon feast as a depiction of the emancipation, as corrupt northern whites encouraged former enslaved people to stop working and enjoy watermelons instead. This idea of implicating black appetites and black character through the watermelon, with the primary message being that African Americans were not ready for their own freedom, and that stereotype of associating blacks with watermelon remains a common occurrence in the United States even today. For example, in 1947, when Jackie Robinson broke Major League Baseball's color barrier, he was confronted by race-baiting taunts, including crowds throwing garbage, tomatoes, and watermelon rinds at him. Even in 1989, blacks protesting the killing of a black boy in Bensonhurst, New York, were taunted by whites, some of them holding watermelons over their heads and screaming at them to go home. There are literally hundreds of instances over the years where the watermelon in association with African Americans being used as a tool of insult. Even decades after the end of the Jim Crow era, this cultural symbol of blacks and watermelon continues. Thank you. I'm your host, Country Boy.
That's pretty mind-boggling. You can't even enjoy delicious food or an actual soda to actually associate somebody's skin color with depiction of, of food. Like, I'm curious, how the fuck does that come into play with skin color? To me, that's some of the most backward shit I've ever heard in my entire life. That's like me making fun of Latinos or Mexicans for, them eating tacos. It's a fucking taco. It's delicious. If it's seasoned right and it's put together right, it's delicious. What the fuck are we talking about here? Like I said, that whole perspective is backwards, and it's been associated with us and within our culture. The stigma has been placed on us for almost 500, 600 plus years, and like I just said, it's a fucking food. It's delicious. I've seen plenty of other ethnicities enjoy watermelon and fried chicken, and as you can see, it's an actual fact that it actually started in European culture, and then they just wanted to depict black people, our ancestors, and then they really wanted to humiliate and oppress us with that. So with that being said, come on y'all, let's just be able to eat some food and enjoy life without this fucking embarrassment. Deuces.